History is full of empires and kingdoms that rose and fell like the tide. But some families just had that extra something. Call it luck, brains, or sheer audacity that let them hold on to power for centuries. These are the dynasties that didn't just make history. They owned it, branded it, and probably slapped a royal seal on it for good measure. Let's talk about some of the greatest dynasties ever. And trust me, these folks didn't need reality TV to stay relevant. First up, the Habsburgs. If you've ever wondered what happens when a family decides to keep it all in the family, literally, these guys are your answer. Ruling over half of Europe for centuries, the Habsburgs were the ultimate power players. They didn't conquer, they married. Why fight a war when you can just marry your cousin and inherit a kingdom? Sure, it led to some interesting genetic quirks, but they held on to power from the 13th century all the way to the 20th. That's like 700 years. Imagine being that kid at the family reunion who has to explain how everyone's related. It's a full-time job just keeping the family tree straight. Or, well, not so straight. Now, let's talk about the Ming Dynasty in China. These guys ruled for nearly 300 years and were all about culture, art, and making sure everyone knew who was boss. They built up the Great Wall. Not from scratch, but they turned it into the 13,000-mile monster we know today. That's a serious flex. And they were obsessed with porcelain. Those fancy blue and white vases you see in museums. Ming Dynasty. They basically invented the art of looking classy while sipping tea. If they were around today, they'd be all over social media, posting tutorials on how to intimidate your neighbors with impeccable interior design. Next, let's hop over to Egypt, where the pharaohs ruled for about 3,000 years. Not a typo, 3 millennia. These guys weren't just kings, they were gods on earth. Imagine waking up every day thinking, "Yep, I'm divine, worship me." And people did. They built pyramids, stuffed them with gold, and mummified everything. Servants, cats, you name it. Why not bring your pet to the afterlife? The pharaohs also loved drama. Cleopatra didn't just rule Egypt, she had Julius Caesar and Mark Antony eating out of her hand. That's not just power, that's charisma with a capital C. Then there's the Romanovs in Russia. They ruled for over 300 years with serious style. Peter the Great decided Russia needed a glow-up and dragged it into the modern age. Catherine the Great expanded the empire and had more romantic subplots than a romance novel. The Romanovs were all about extravagance. Think Fabergé eggs in palaces that make your house look like a broom closet. Sure, it all ended with the Russian Revolution, but 300 years is a decent inning. And if your family's finale involves a wild-eyed mystic named Rasputin, you've definitely earned your spot in the history books. Let's swing by India for the Mughal dynasty. These guys were the definition of extra. Ruling for about 300 years, they left behind stuff like the Taj Mahal, Shah Jahan's over-the-top love letter to his wife. Forget chocolates. Build her a marble masterpiece. The Mughals mixed Persian, Indian, and Islamic vibes into a cultural smoothie that was as rich as it was powerful. And their food? If you've ever had biryani, you owe them a thank you note. They turned dining into an art form while ruling half a subcontinent. Don't sleep on the Ottomans either. Starting as a tiny tribe in Turkey, they built an empire that stretched across Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa for over 600 years. They were the champs of the Mediterranean, with a talent for organization, warfare, and backstabbing intrigue. The Ottoman court was a soap opera, power plays, betrayals, and the occasional poisoned cup of coffee. The harem was like a dating show, where the prize was running an empire. Hundreds of women competing for the Sultan's eye, no pressure there. Now let's head to Africa for the Mali Empire. Mansa Musa, their star player, was so rich he accidentally tanked economies just by flexing his wealth. On his pilgrimage to Mecca, he handed out so much gold that prices crashed in every city he passed through. That's not just rich, that's I break markets for fun rich. Mali was a hub of trade and learning, with Timbuktu boasting libraries and universities while Europe was still figuring out the Dark Ages. Talk about being ahead of the curve. And we can't skip the British monarchy. They've been at it for over 1,000 years. From William the Conqueror to the current crew, they've survived wars, revolutions, and tabloid scandals, all while maintaining a stiff upper lip and a corgi obsession. They went from absolute rulers to charming figureheads, staying relevant by doing less and smiling more. Royal weddings are their secret weapon. Everyone loves a big hat and a fairy tale vibe. It's less about power now and more about pageantry, but a millennium-long run is nothing to sneeze at. So there you go, some of the greatest dynasties in history. These families didn't just rule, they shaped the world with ambition, luck, and a flair for the dramatic. They built empires, hoarded wealth, and left legacies that still grab our attention. Whether it was through strategic marriages, giant walls, or crashing economies with kindness, they proved that with the right moves, you can dominate for centuries. And if nothing else, they gave us some epic tales to chew on.